Season 2 is here for Black Ops 6, but what's changed and what's new? While we've already covered the content coming, I wanted to take a look at the gameplay related items that you can expect to see jumping into Black Ops 6 now after the update. So drop your thoughts below, drop a like if you enjoy the video, and make sure to subscribe for more Black Ops 6 coverage as we gear up for the future. And of course, make sure to follow over on Twitch to come hang out and chat as we get back into the swing of everything, linked down below. But for now, let's get into what changed with Season 2 of Black Ops 6. So let's start firstly with global changes to Black Ops 6. Things you can expect to see across all the modes, not just one singular one. Progression, we had a few changes and updates. While some of it was visual bug fixes like quick resuming, Black Ops 6 would show all players as level 1, there's other adjustments that were made that got rid of things like the pesky "congratulations, you've mastered prestige" that would always happen. Now this was previously available to be bypassed by plugging in a mouse and clicking through that via the mouse, but if you're on console, obviously not an easy fix that you want to do. We also saw a bit more in prestige ribbons for things letting you know that it's available more prominently, among other things. One small thing I'm happy about but doesn't quite apply to me anymore is that you can now tab between the prestige rewards of each prestige with this update, meaning you don't have to back out to that prestige progression listing and reset all the way back down to prestige 1 every time. Just one of those first world minorly annoying things that shouldn't bother you but always did bother me. Challenge tracking and near completion is of course new here with this update, where you can track up to 10 camo and 10 calling card challenges, and if you don't manually populate this, it will fill with the closest to completion for each of those, allowing you to at least have something to check the status on if you're looking for more XP to earn. This will all be seen in-game or in the lobby by cycling the daily challenge widget, comparable to last year. One thing that I really liked that was not previously mentioned about this is the fact that if you're tracking a weapon's camo, it can automatically populate the next challenge upon completion. So let's say you're tracking the Splinter camo, 20 headshots on the XM4. When you complete those 20 headshots, it will auto-populate to update to be the Moss camo challenge, which is 30 headshots, the next one in that sequential order when you complete it. So either until you choose to deselect it or you've completed the challenge, you'll at least always have that available on offer. A cool little progression of that challenge tracking for camos in particular, in my opinion. Additionally, it was mentioned that this feature is planned but not coming immediately to Warzone. It says that it's coming at a later date. I'd imagine, just a conservative guess, this is a Season 3, maybe 2.5 update, but who knows. With how much of its own stuff it had to clean up with this update, it's a bummer, but there were definitely bigger fish to fry. And speaking of camos, actually, the prerequisites for multiplayer camo use on special camos has now been adjusted. Previously, you had to do all of the 9 military camo categories to end up using any of the specials, any of the 240 available as of recording this, now with more weapons and camos, but that's now updated so you only have to unlock the first 5 military camos to use any special on any of those weapons. So not even halfway through the grind, you can unlock that ability at 30 headshots. Really simple and makes it more accessible if they're keeping that sort of prerequisite in place, though personally I don't think that you need any prerequisite. I feel like if you've unlocked the specials, you should be able to use it on any of the weapons, but that's just me. Multiplayer in particular, let's talk firstly about weaponry. Before we get into specific weapon breakdowns, there's a few things that were more general changes to the experience of weapons, like categorical changes rather than specific weapon changes that we should first mention. For every weapon in the game, we saw adjustments to weapon motion, weapon animation on respawn, and bullet penetration. The weapon motion, with dexterity equipped, weapons should now feel more stable while jumping, sliding, and diving. The weapon animations were slightly adjusted where they're still present now upon respawn, but are now immediately interruptible when firing, aiming down sight, sprinting, or performing any gameplay action. So you can cancel them and are not stuck in that animation, which is definitely a good change. And then bullet penetration is being tuned down significantly, decreasing the maximum depth that bullets can pass through all materials, with longer term plans to make bullet penetration more consistent, but that's a future update here. One thing that I'm curious to see if this affects is all of the wall banging from basically spawn to spawn on Nuketown. I think that was one of the things that I saw the most consistent, like, what's even happening type of reactions to bullet penetration. And in hardcore, it was honestly sometimes a situation where you could not leave spawn because you could just truly shoot from spawn to spawn. Now, magazine changes were made where the fast mag reload across the board was getting a buff. Fast mag 1, 2, 3, and the flip mags, all of their reload times were improved by 10% on all weapons but pistols. The Fast Mag 1 and 2 reloads on pistols are improved by 5%. All LMGs with 50 or fewer rounds in their magazines have their reloads improved by 5%. The AS-Val default mag had its reload improved by 10%, and the SWAT 556 should now properly have that Fast Mag bonus actually working. It was not before. But weapon balancing, there's a couple of weapons and a couple of categories that are adjusted here. The Goblin saw its medium and max damage ranges increased. The Compact 92 saw an adjustment to the 3-round burst, where that medium and max damage range was increased. Shotguns, they improved the ranges and sprint to fire speeds on these to make them a bit more competitive, but it's also something that's not, I don't think on paper, super detrimental, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how that actually plays in practice. But the Marine SP ended up getting the ranges increased at medium and the max damage ranges. The ASG 89 had its ranges increased, but also improved that sprint to fire speed and tactical sprint to fire speed, while the Maelstrom had all ranges increased except for the max range, which actually saw a slight reduction, but just only of 1 meter. The fire rate was improved. The sprint to fire and tactical sprint to fire speeds were also improved on the Maelstrom. The PU-21 saw its open bolt delay decreased, cut by over half, so that's definitely nice in trying to get that first shot off. There's not as much a delay now from when you pull the trigger. The sprint to fire and tactical sprint to fire speeds were improved, and it had reductions to its view kick. The DM-10, its gain twist barrel is adjusted, where the bullet velocity was increased by an additional 20% in bonus. The sniper rifles overall saw reductions to ADS speeds on quick draw grips, but also had damage buffs to try and compensate for that. So I'm curious to see how this will be received when it plays, but you ended up having these things adjusted where, again, across the snipers, you had slower handling, but a little bit more in that damage. Interesting trade-off. The Strider had its bullet penetration improved, actually, whereas other weapons had it decreased, obviously. And then the launchers saw a whole host of different improvements to the handling that just make these a bit more viable and maybe worthwhile to bring out. Even if you are just going for those camo challenges, it won't be something that's so tedious or annoying or anything like that. But as for challenge updates as a whole, listen, I know I'm probably such a huge nerd in saying this over and over, but if you're a challenge hunter, this on paper, assuming nothing goes wrong, is a huge update for those chasing camos, 100%er. Mix this with things like the challenge tracking, and it's a huge win on paper. So I'm very excited to jump in and try these out and to make some more progress. But challenges overall, Treyarch sort of had a preface in their patch notes where they said Black Ops 6 launched with more calling card challenges than any recent Call of Duty, brought the return of 100%er calling cards for multiplayer and zombies, and brought a deep calling card grind to Warzone with its own 100%er card for the first time. It has been very exciting to see players strategizing over and unlocking all the various calling card challenges in the game since launch. Some multiplayer challenges, however, have been either a bit on the frustrating side or have had bugs and other issues that have prevented some players from completing them on the path to 100%er. For Season 2, we've put a big focus on fixing these challenge bugs and smoothing over key frustration points players have been experiencing as a part of the multiplayer calling card challenge grind since launch. We hope these fixes and updates help players stuck in their challenge journey and unblock their progress towards 100% completion. So what do they mean with these changes? What kind of things can we expect to see? Well, first, score streak challenges are easier for camos and any challenge that actually require this. Progress now no longer needs to be the final blow for the destruction, so that is 100% solid. Now I feel like I saw challenge tracking of that where I'd put at least a shot into it, like a counter UAV or something like that. It would be 2 rockets to kill. I feel like I'd sometimes get credit for that if I ended up having the first and some other teammate shot it down, but now it's going to 100% give you credit no matter what. Then we ended up seeing a bunch of different calling card challenges in particular that were adjusted and mentioned. The redemption arc for the going ham challenges removed the time requirement of needing to get a kill shortly after being revived. Now players can be revived and then get a kill anytime during that life, and it will count towards that. So definitely nice. The grace period for this was so slim that it made a very tough challenge to begin with, so nice that that is adjusted. TikTok Boom, the humiliation challenge for Semtex sticks, now only needs you to actually stick players with it. Doesn't seem like you actually have to get the kill with the Semtex stick as well, which again will make it easier. I had a couple on my grind for that it didn't really work out too well, and they either died before or they, in some rare cases, had like spawn protection that it didn't kill them immediately. The On Point Prestige 1 challenge, this now had its grace period increased for the dive shot medal. This was a challenge and sort of medal overall that was adjusted for this that gave more of that leniency period, but now that ties into this On Point challenge that makes it a little bit easier when diving. The Squint Test Prestige 1 challenge, the Moonshot medal that is required has now been reduced again from 100 meters to 75 meters. I think beforehand it was 250 at launch, so it was literally impossible. There were a few spots within the game currently that supported 100 meters in a line of sight, since they ended up changing that you couldn't get it with like the proximity mine or the Archangel rocket anymore. So 75 meters is actually attainable on a lot of different locations. So that should be a lot easier to obtain now. The Explosive Plays Prestige 4 challenge just ended up fixing it where it had a display wrong in the calling card name. The Hot Dog challenge reduced the amount of Molotov or thermo grenade kills that you needed to get without dying from 4 to 3, so that makes it easier to attain. The Headhunter Prestige 5 challenge addressed a typo that then said the accurate piece of what you needed. The Speed Demon Prestige 6 challenge reduced the kills while activated requirement from 3 to 2, so definitely cool and makes that actually a lot easier. The Score Collector Prestige challenge requires now 5 score streak kills in a single game to progress instead of 10. Again, way easier on that. The Deep Cover Prestige 7 challenge now added the ability to earn progress with kills in search while disguised as the sleeper agent field upgrade, in addition to the bomb plants and diffuses. And this, listen, I don't know how much I've talked about it here on the channel. I've talked about it in stream and everything like that, but this I think was actually the bane of my existence challenge, in a sense that it wasn't even a tough challenge, but like with static spawns, with a sort of field upgrade charge rate not working properly with Gearhead, and only really having one shot at this per match, it was so incredibly frustrating, and it was the only challenge on the 100%er grind that was so specific to one singular mode. So that was one that had me crash out and I was just losing my mind over. So it's definitely nice that now you can use this with Gearhead that should be working properly now at this point, that you can just get kills with this as well. So that'll be nice for on sort of round breaks or something like that. When everybody's up, it's going to be tougher for enemies to end up seeing who's who, so that should absolutely be easier now at this point. The Switchblade Prestige 7 challenge ended up adding the ability to progress with melee damage. The Ripped Up Prestige 8 challenge now only needs you to track individual kills rather than 3 rapid kills with a chopper gunner. Same thing with the Devastating Force one, where it's not rapid kills to the Dreadnought, just total kills overall with this. The Hunt Them Down Prestige Master Challenge removed the acoustic amp requirement, which now only requires point blank kills and the specified perks. Again, another huge and very welcome change, I think, that makes an overly tedious and not necessarily hard challenge, but just like annoyingly long challenge. Because again, before Gearhead really didn't work out all that much, that it just now makes this way easier, especially if you go into Stakeout. And the Hard and Fast Prestige Master Challenge addressed the typo where it incorrectly referenced Ghost instead of Double Time. I'd like to think that they saw my short on that addressing that change, but who knows? Anyways, the final sort of challenge change was the Global Mastery Camo calling card, where this will now correctly grant upon completing the final camo in all 3 modes. So you need Dark Matter, Nebula, and Abyss to end up getting this. It's not quite yet known if this still applies to only the base 33 weapons or any 33 weapons. That's one thing that is yet to be fully detailed, but I guess we'll see as more people report if they have it or not. The only, and I mean only, downside to all these challenge fixes that I see is that somehow, Flowing Low is still not fixed. That Prestige 1 challenge, I had a few comments a couple of days to weeks ago saying that it was working for people, but has not been for me. Maybe upon jumping in, it will somehow be working for me, that something was knocked ajar that fixed this. Perhaps the adjustments to how snaked metals are earned, which they stated was extended to be more forgiving. Maybe that fixes it and it actually does work, but who knows? So while I love these other changes, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit bummed that 100%er is still not possible. And I guarantee a fix will be coming at mid-season while I'm on vacation too, because I can't escape COD timing. Why would I be able to? But anyways, additional fixes include reductions in collision with teammates, so this should improve the maneuverability around tight spaces, like doorways with nearby teammates. Stakeout, I was always bumping into teammates, so very much so looking forward to that change. Other sort of high-profile bug fixes included an addressing of an issue that prevented end-of-game match bonuses for XP payouts being rewarded, so you are going to get that XP. That's definitely nice, obviously much needed. And they also addressed an issue that would incorrectly display when a field upgrade is ready. And mixing that with Prepper, that would also cause a bug that would occur that would have the split options HUD pop up, but you couldn't get rid of that unless you swapped classes, and you couldn't activate either of them to get it away. So that should now be fixed. Ranked play, moving a little beyond the sort of just core multiplayer experience. The big thing is they offered the ability to swap to console crossplay, where in ranked you have the ability to have it on with consoles only, or off. That's both for PlayStation and Xbox. This is going to be entirely up to you, but hopefully should be something that makes the game a little bit less cheater infested. And that honestly is probably one of the biggest things I'd say to tick on immediately if you are somebody that is a ranked play grinder. And this is coming from somebody that has played PC exclusively the last 5 years. PC is absolutely the problem and the basis of all of this. Yes, there's cheating here within some consoles. You can end up getting some cheats there, but your sort of ability to run into those cheaters is way smaller than if you come into contact with somebody that may be cheating and originating from PC. So that is something that I'd highly recommend checking out. The only other thing to note with that is that it's only for ranked play. This does not turn off crossplay for the other matchmaking experiences, just ranked play. Now, as for zombies, of course, we all have that content that was added for the tomb. That's the big stuff, and we've already detailed all of that. But in terms of changes, one of the biggest things that I think will affect grinders, if the wording is correct, I'm recording this the night before this goes live, so as of recording, I don't have the facilities to check in if it's patched or not, but they said they addressed a server stability issue that could occur when zombies continue to spawn when no players were present during an active incantation ritual. Now, this sounds like they nerfed the infinite wave spawn of the incantation ritual. So if you are not in that main courtyard for the souls to be harvested, it might not be spawning them. Huge bummer if so, because that's a huge helper for camo grinding in those critical kills departments. But interestingly, it also doesn't seem like they did anything for the oil trap method also mentioned on Citadel. So that persists, it seems, for now, but anyways, another big one is changes for challenges. The Box Addict Dark Ops challenge added a hard cap of only 37 different weapons being required to end up getting this. Plus, of course, the kill streaks and the stuff that come along with that, which matches the amount at launch that was required. So anything added post-launch does not increase the difficulty of that challenge, and it's definitely nice to see that. The Gladiator Fresh Meat Challenge will now track exfils at or above round 11, and the Surveyor Challenge ends up having the random perk power-up applying progress to the challenge as well. Additional good changes here, I'd say, are players will now see an in-game notification when they complete an augment research step and unlock a new augment, and they updated the in-game pause menu augments research progress along with other visual improvements. So that's definitely nice for keeping track and keeping tabs on what you've done and what you hoped to accomplish in a match by gaining XP. So that is Black Ops 6 here, but let's jump over to Warzone, because with basically no content coming this season, what changed that makes this at all different? Global changes applied, but what else? Well, for map-specific stuff, Urzikstan ended up seeing some buy stations being updated, Gulag loadouts being refreshed, and the train's automatic brake release timer is now increased by 400%. Area 99 saw 2 additional buy stations added. But general changes, we saw all buy stations, including deployable ones, now close at the beginning of the final circle. Deployable boxes, so munitions, armor, and others, can now no longer be placed in the gas as well, with Raven commenting on both of those specifically to being committed to identifying and addressing other air quote cheese strategies, as they put it, in the game in the future, and will be monitoring further. XP adjustments were made across the modes for Battle Royale, Resurgence, and Plunder, where Battle Royale increased both player and weapon XP. Resurgence, they decreased player XP but increased weapon XP, and Plunder, they increased player XP but decreased weapon XP. So a little bit of some weird trade-offs here in how this sort of efficiency of each of these may work. Personally, having not played much Warzone since Season 1 launched, I don't know quite exactly how much of a big change this will be. But anyways, beyond that, quality of life changes, we saw advanced UAVs now display elevation arrows. Ammo caches now will end up functioning like munitions boxes, dropping additional ammo beyond what was just in your magazine. Buyback flares from the buy stations that flare up in the sky, that can actually now be pinged to better visualize where enemies may be coming from, to give a sort of heads up to your teammates. And the opacity on items will now fade for 300 meters and beyond. Combat and mobility, if you're a body shield, you'll no longer be able to be released midair, and you'll always be executed before being let go of. Jumping speeds and successive heights have been increased for one more unmodified jump, which is a sort of mini bunny hopping update here with this. I'd be curious to see just how sort of efficient this is, but we'll have to wait and see. And then parachuting saw an increase to the speed of the cut animation and the player velocity when cutting the parachute for a more smooth transition into the gameplay on the ground. Now, beyond that, we saw a bunch of weapon balancing here, both in a general perspective and to specific weapons as well. First of which, reload speeds have been improved across all weapons, with increases ranging from 5 to 20% depending on the weapon class. Now, to spare you the monotony of listing off every single weapon class in each of the last 3 games, most of the Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 weapons have received faster buffs, trying to bring them up to be a bit more competitive, while the Black Ops 6 weapons are more in line with what we saw with the multiplayer adjustments, as we just mentioned. On screen, though, is all the data and details if you're interested in the specifics, but again, just general rule of thumb, Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 weapons got a bit more in terms of that increase to the speeds. But the reload speeds also for the flip and fast mag attachments have been increased by an additional 5% as well. Bullet penetration, weapon swap speeds, sprint to fire, and aim down sight speeds were all, again, categorically adjusted, where bullet penetration, as they mentioned with Black Ops 6, adjusted the bullet penetration across most materials, meaning that you're going to have more consistent experiences, but also less sort of bullet penetration across the board. Weapon swapping, that swap speed was increased by 10%, effectively replicating, again, the effects of the quick grip gloves, as we talked about from Modern Warfare this past year. The sprint to fire penalty when jumping was reduced from 35% to 10%, so a pretty significant adjustment there. And then aiming down sight, they reduced the ADS default jump speed penalty by 25%. Now, to go more specific into individual weapons, we did see a handful of these adjusted as well, where the AK saw damage range buffs, an ADS and sprint to fire, as well as lower torso multiplier improvements. The AIMS 85 saw a leg and headshot multiplier increase. The AS Val simply had its default mag have an increase on that reload speed by 5%. The Goblin mirrors the Black Ops 6 adjustments, but also increases that damage at mid-range while improving the bullet velocity and extremities multipliers. The GPR saw nerfs to the ranges, ADS, and sprint to fire time, as well as leg multipliers, and the Model L saw increases to the minimum and max damage ranges, as well as the leg multipliers. Now, one that I'm sure a lot of people are interested in is the XM4. That had range decreases and a 30% penalty now instead of 15% to the 100 round mag, as well as a buffer stock adjustment that's a pretty healthy nerf to that as well. So hopefully knocking the XM4 out of that predominant overarching meta of Warzone as we saw this past couple of months. The C9 saw improvements to the ranges as well as mobility attributes. The Jackal saw a range nerf as well as multipliers and bullet velocity nerfs. The Compact 92 saw improvements to the ADS and sprint to fire times. The KSV saw improvements to the ranges and handling. The PP919 saw decreases to the range as well as multipliers. The XMG saw adjustments to the buffer weight stock, and the 9mm PM saw increases to the ranges as well as a bit to the headshot multiplier. Now, the final thing we'll talk about here in regards to Warzone attributes, other than just a large plethora of bug fixes, which will just be scrolling on screen, is audio. We saw adjustments to third-party reverb, where it's going to be reducing the reverb effects to improve directionality of movement audio produced by other players. So that's footsteps, ascenders, parachutes, other stuff that is ambient around you but triggered by a player. Parachuting, again, we saw the adjustment to the parachute audio being louder than intended at further distances, so another adjustment to the parachutes overall. And then the self-revive, players will now hear the enemy's self-revive sound. Not entirely sure if that was just like entirely absent in Season 1 or what. Again, haven't played a whole ton of Warzone since Season 1's launch, but kind of crazy that was a staple from day one of original Warzone, and it's now being reintroduced here within Season 2. But again, outside of a whole plethora of different bug fixes on screen scrolling for you, just so we don't have to list off every single one, that is Season 2 in a nutshell, and everything that changed across Black Ops 6 multiplayer, zombies, and Warzone. Now, one thing I wasn't quite sure where to put in this video, because frankly, it's not as insightful as I'd like it to be, other than, hey, we made some changes, is the topic of Ricochet anti-cheat. What do I mean by this? Well, the patch notes state, as previously discussed in our recent community update blog, we are ramping up our fight against cheaters across both multiplayer and Warzone, with new security measures deploying throughout the coming seasons. Updates including enhanced detection models for behaviors like aimbotting, stricter account trust and hardware identification to target repeat offenders, and new tools to combat dishonest behavior such as playing with cheaters or attempting to spam report innocent players. We are also focusing on more precise tools, including major upgrades to the kernel level driver and server-side systems starting this season and continuing into Season 3. These measures, combined with ongoing improvements and legal actions against cheat sellers, aim to deliver a more secure and enjoyable experience for everyone. For more information on the Ricochet anti-cheat, check out our recent community update. So what I mean by this is that it's not as insightful as I'd like, is because I didn't know where to put this in the video because it is important, yes, but like other stuff we've talked about, there are specifics beyond we're targeting this. We're going after cheat sellers and stuff like that. Things like hard data sets with weapon tuning, clear and present changes to gameplay and challenges and such, while the messaging of this kind of just seems like, hey, we promise we're doing something. So especially with all the grief that it's caused the last 2 months or so, it's certainly a situation of I'll believe it when I see it, but I mean, fingers crossed, I guess. But for now, I'm taking this straight up as just a PR style statement. But anyways, that is Season 2. Let me know your thoughts on the season. Of course, there is a very high probability that something is going to break. We see this usually with every single title update that, while on paper it presents a lot of fixes, a lot of good changes, it also still seemingly breaks something. So if you have any issues with this here around the launch or when this video goes up, chances are they're going to be addressed or fixed here, especially if they're pressing things like matchmaking. But for the time being, that's where we're at. So let me know your thoughts down below. What do you guys think of, at least on paper, Season 2 and the adjustments made? Liking any of the content so far? Whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 6 as we gear up for the rest of Season 2 and of course, other FPS content in the future. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.